Good evening. This hearing is now in session and is being recorded to maintain a permanent record. My name is Danielle Boudreau. I am the rulemaking coordinator at the Department of State Lands, and I will be serving as the department's hearing officer. Today's date is February 21, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. Joining me from the department we have Kirk Jarvie, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, Kirk Jarvie, Department of State Lands, Policy Analyst, Lead Staff Person for development of the proposed draft Division 89 rules.
And we also have Dana Hicks.
Hi, Dana Hicks, Planning and Policy Manager for Department of State Lands.
Thank you. And Melinda Butterfield.
Hi, I'm Melinda Butterfield with Oregon Department of State Lands. I'm an Aquatic Resource Coordinator.
Thank you. The purpose of this evening's meeting is twofold. We will begin with an information session followed by the public rule hearing for the proposed amendments of Oregon Administrative Rules Division 141-089 by the Department of State Lands regarding the issuance and enforcement of general authorizations in the waters of this state. During the information session, Kirk will provide an overview of the proposed amendments, which will be followed by a question and answer session. Once that is concluded, we will begin the public rule hearing. Please note that during the rule hearing, the department will not be answering any questions or responding to comments. This meeting will conclude when all participants who wish to comment have finished. As you can see on our agenda, we have 6 p.m. the information session and 7 p.m. the public rule hearing. We'll go straight into the public rule hearing once there are no more questions. So that's just an estimation of time. All right. Thank you. And I'll hand it over. Oh, I have another slide. Sorry. Since we're on Zoom, we have a couple of protocols. If you wish to ask a question or provide a comment, please raise your hand. To do so, click the reaction icon near the bottom of your screen and click raise hand. Or if you're using the telephone to call in, press *9. Participants will be called in the order in which hands are raised, and we ask that you keep your mic muted unless it's your turn to speak. And we ask that you please be respectful of each other and DSL representatives. And if there are numerous participants who wish to speak, time will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to accommodate each participant. All right, now I'll hand it over to Kirk.
Great, thank you, Danielle. Hello again, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate your interest in this rulemaking effort. I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for the proposed changes to these administrative rules, and then I'm going to provide a high-level overview, emphasis on high level, of the proposed changes. Before I jump into that, I just want to make sure that you all understand the basics of what a general authorization is. So let me review that. State law, the removal fill law, provides DSL the authority to identify and pre-approve certain activities in wetlands and waterways. Those pre-approvals are called general authorizations, and they're available to anyone looking to do work in a wetland or waterway in Oregon. The law says that we can create these pre-approvals for and only for projects that have no more than minimal environmental impacts and no long-term harm to water resources. That pre-approval is done through the adoption of administrative rules, this Division 89 that we're talking about tonight. So, you know, Division 89 has 3 basic parts to it. The first part describes the notification-based process that users do to apply. Basically, in a nutshell, a person sends a notice to the department describing which pre-approved activity they're looking to do. They provide a brief description of their project. They submit a fee if there is a fee required, and within 30 days, the department makes a determination whether the project is eligible under that general authorization. If it is, off you go to do your project. Part 2 of the rule describes the general conditions that apply to any activity that's undertaken under a general authorization. And then finally, part 3 discusses or lays out what exactly the pre-approved activities are. By administrative rule right now, as it stands today, there are 9 pre-approved activities. Those are minimal disturbance in designated essential salmonid habitat waterways, called ESH, piling placement and removal in ESH, temporary impacts to non-tidal wetlands, waterway bank stabilization, certain transportation-related activities, removal of sediment behind tide gates, waterway habitat restoration, wetland restoration, and finally, non-motorized placer mining in ESH. I would just note that that last general authorization type, non-motorized placer mining, is not a subject of this rulemaking. That activity involves some very specific things and has a very limited and very specific audience. So if the department were to undertake rulemaking regarding placer mining, we would do that as a separate effort. So need for the rules. The department's identified 4 needs at this time. One is we know that we need to update some of the general and activity-specific conditions in the general authorizations to make sure that protection of the functions and values of wetlands and waterways is maintained. The second is we've identified, and other customers of ours have identified, potential activities that could be added as general authorizations that have no more than minimal adverse effects and no long-term harm to water resources. So we wanted to bring those activities in. There are two general authorization activities that are either no longer being used by customers anymore or are duplicative of other permitting options available to folks. So we're proposing to remove those. I'll talk more about those in a moment. And finally, we recognize that there were some inconsistency and readability issues with the current rules. So we've attempted to make them more clear for both staff and for the regulated public. If we can go to the next slide, please, Danielle. So I will review again in a very high level way what the proposed changes are, really key changes. I would encourage you to look at our website for the track changes version so that you can see in much gorier detail what the proposed changes are. But at a high level, first of all, we are proposing to change the rules such that no general authorization activity would be allowed in the Willamette River between river miles 1.9 and 11.8. So what's special about those river miles? Those river miles are the Portland Harbor Superfund site administered by the US EPA and DEQ. As you can imagine, it's a very sensitive site in terms of potential for contaminants. It's also very sensitive in that there are many remedial actions that have occurred within the river in those river miles. Therefore, we believe that any activity, future activities we might want to authorize within the Superfund site need a closer, more detailed scrutiny by staff and by the public than what a general authorization process can otherwise provide. Second proposed change is that most GA applications, really we call them notifications, must include completed fish passage review. Most projects in waterways and Oregon already require fish passage review. So what we're simply trying to fix here is a chicken and the egg situation. It's been unclear to people whether they should come to DSL first and get their GA approval and then go to Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife to get their fish passage review, or to do it the other way around. So this proposed rule change simply answers that question and says, Get your completed fish passage review first from ODFW, then come to us for your final authorization to do that work. We've added a general permit condition for cases where equipment needs to be operated below the ordinary high water line of a waterway. So it provides safety precautions so as to protect the functions and values of the waterway when equipment does need to operate below high water. As a result of some of these rule changes, there's been a change in which GAs require a fee. Fees are established by statute. We have no control to change fees through administrative rule. So when we apply the statute to the proposed changes in rule, what we discover is that only 2 GAs would now be applicable to the $250 submittal fee. And that would be the new overwater structures GA and the temporary impact GA. And even then, with those 2 activities, a fee would only apply if the total amount of removal and fill exceeded 50 cubic yards. We are proposing to add 2 activities to the minimal disturbance in essential salmonid habitat general authorization. The first activity is beaver pond levelers and exclusion devices. These are devices that either serve to exclude or diminish the ability of beaver to create dams in front of culverts. You can just imagine what sort of problems that creates. It also allows the installation of what I'll describe as standpipes, where a beaver dam has already been built and a pond has formed. This would allow the installation of a standpipe to set an elevation for that pond above which the water could not rise and cause harm to adjacent properties or infrastructure. So it's a way to manage beaver damming activity without necessarily having to go out and tear out those dams, because they do provide important ecological functions. The current piling general authorization was substantially rewritten to address and authorize certain small residential docks, certain forms of public recreation structures like swimming platforms and floating restrooms, allow certain small-scale commercial dock maintenance activities, and allow the removal of up to 50 derelict piling within a waterway. I'll take the next slide, please. Temporary impact general authorization. Currently, that authorization only allows up to 0.2 acres of temporary impact to non-tidal wetlands. So that you know, the department defines a temporary impact as no more than 2 years. The proposed changes would expand that GA to allow temporary impact to a non-tidal wetlands up to 1/2 acre. It would allow temporary impact to tidal wetlands of up to 0.2 acres and would allow temporary work area isolation in waterways. Proposed GA changes include a proposal to remove the certain transportation activities GA. The 3 activities that were authorized in that general authorization are by and large already exempt by state law. So the need for that GA has really been diminished. That GA also allowed for certain tide gate modification activities to improve fish passage, but even that activity is already permitted in a separate general authorization. So basically the need for that transportation GA has completely gone away. The second GA that we're proposing to remove is the sediment behind tide gates GA. In that case, we have 2 exemptions already in the removal fill law that allow folks to clean out sediment either within or behind tide gates. And in cases where those exemptions may not apply, there is a new permitting program that's been created by the Oregon Department of Agriculture called the Agricultural Drainage Channel Maintenance Program. And it's through that program that agricultural interests can get state approval to remove sediment behind tide gates. So because of those exemptions and because of the creation of that new program at ODA, it has really negated the need for that GA. I'll also mention that in the last 10 years, only 4 people have even applied for that GA. So the interest in it has been very, very minimal. A couple more changes to be aware of. In the bank stabilization GA, currently it's only allowed to be used in non-tidal waterways. We are proposing to expand that to be usable in tidal waterways. The rules have offered some additional guidance for the use of large wood in terms of types and sizes of large wood. And it has deleted engineered log jams and porous weirs from that GA. Those activities can now be found in the waterway habitat GA. So they're still available. Those technologies are still available to folks, just in a different place in this rule. That's all. In the waterway habitat GA, we've added a new activity called habitat logs, beaver dam analogs, and post-assisted log structures. These are activities that are gaining prominence in the restoration community to add stream complexity, to help sort of bring back some of the functions and values that historically were provided by beavers. These are technologies that help either encourage beaver activity or provide the functions that beaver activity would otherwise do. And we've also expanded the allowed types of culvert and tide gate projects that can be done when they're being done to benefit fish passage. Let's see, under the wetland ecosystem GA, just a few small changes there. One is currently that GA only allows berms to be removed if those berms are no more than 3 feet high. We removed that limitation. And we've also added the allowance for placement of temporary exclusion fencing in wetlands where needed to protect native plantings until they get to a free-to-grow state. And then finally, as I mentioned, no changes to non-motorized placer mining. If the department were to undertake changes in that, we would do it as a separate rulemaking effort. So Danielle, I will turn it back to you.
Okay, now, at this time, we'll now take any questions regarding the proposed rule language and amendments. So please raise your hand if you have any questions. And again, during the public comment period, we will not be answering any questions or responding to comments. So now is the time, if you do have questions, to go ahead and ask those. Yes, we have a question from Craig Herman.
Mute.
You're unmuted. We can hear you now.
Okay, I took a little time to figure out how to get that cranked around. Anyway,
Oh, no worries.
Sorry, Daniel. This is in the section 141.089.073. This is the waterway bank stabilization stuff. And I'm reserving my comments for later, but just, I was confused about the, under A, the slope 3.3 versus 1 HV, and I didn't really see that defined. And so I'm kind of guessing maybe what that means is that, should that be defined somewhere? I don't know. I look at it, I'm going, well, I could misinterpret that.
I see, you're talking about the H:V and what that means?
Yes, HV, H
Okay,
slash V.
yeah, it's a good point, Craig. That H is for horizontal, the V is for
Okay.
vertical, so it's specifying a slope.
The reason I asked that, when I talked with Chris Clare at Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, he comes out with a 412 pitch on a bank stabilization, the way they like to see it, or something like
Hmm,
4 feet of rise for every 12 feet of run type of thing. So,
right.
okay, thank you. I'm just was
Okay.
asking a dumb question.
Nope, not dumb at all.
Thank
So
you.
and Chris, I'll just point out Chris Clare's ratio there, that 412 actually is when you do the math, it's a 3-to-1.
Okay.
Or pretty close to 3-to-1. Thank you, Craig.
Do we have any other questions at this time? Okay, seeing as we have no more questions, we'll go on to the public comment period. We'll now begin the public rule hearing portion of this evening's meeting. If you wish to provide an oral comment, please raise your hand now and we'll call upon you in the order in which hands are raised. And to raise your hand in Zoom, you'll click the reactions near the bottom of your screen and click raise hand, or if you're on the phone, by pressing *9. We ask that you remain muted until you are called. Craig, go ahead.
Mute and okay, just takes a few seconds. I don't have the fastest internet down here in Bandon. Sorry. This is back to well, I'm on a riverbank, and I'm in a tidal area. And when I look at some of the rules with regard to from 141-089-720, which is waterway bank stabilization using bioengineering, I'm like, I give what's bioengineering. It just feels like that's kind of something out there in the clouds or something. And then I look at the requirements of, like, in 141-089-730, it just feels like these are so restrictive or dictated. The entire bank must be replanted with native vegetation. Was it within, let's see, what's it within the time period? It seemed like it had to be done pretty quickly, like within a year. And I thought, well, that's pretty restrictive time frame. Given when you do a project, it may take 3 years to be able to go back and do the replanning. And then I think there was somewhere I thought I read, and it's pretty hard to read this stuff when it's all lined out, exactly the time frame that must be replanted in. So that was a concern. The other thing is these root wad things. That really has nothing to do with riverbank stabilization. It's kind of the thinking that this is going to help fish, and it doesn't really do anything for stabilizing the bank. And then placement of large root wads, it dictates how those are be done. It dictates how you place the root wads, and I'm not even sure it's even really necessary. And then for anchoring them, untreated wood posts, or you can't use anything that's treated. So it's a short time frame when it can be rotted away. And then riprap. You guys don't like riprap at all. And I think it's a really good tool, particularly if you're looking at stabilizing the riverbank to prevent erosion. And then also, if you are looking at putting in woody substances along a bank, what I'm saying is that if something floats up naturally and sticks on the bank, there's something called a scouring effect that's caused by the current. And the only way to kind of stabilize that would be to use riprap to help stabilize any type of woody substance you're putting along a bank. And this is over in 141-089-735. Riprap rock is not allowed or something. So I think that's a bit restrictive. So anyway, sorry, but Daniel, those are my concerns, that I mean, it sounds good on paper, but when you try to use this to actually stabilize a riverbank or pull it back, it seems like it's very, very directive. And each section of the river, if it's upland river, upstream, it doesn't have a tidal effect. If it's downstream, it does have a tidal effect. It has a different factor. So by putting these things so restrictive, it makes it difficult to do the right type of project. Anyway, those are my comments, and thank you, Danielle.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate your attendance and providing those comments.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Do we have anybody else who would wish to provide comment? All right, seeing as no other participants have requested to share a public comment, we'll go ahead and move on. In addition to the oral comments, you're encouraged to submit written comments, and those may be submitted through March 4th, 2024, at 5 p.m. And that can be through email, and that's dsl.rules@dsl.oregon.gov, or through our online form, or by mail if you wish. I'll leave this up here for half a minute in case anybody wants to copy it down. And this presentation will also be posted on our website.
Danielle, it
Yes.
might be good to clarify if a oral comment was given tonight, does it still have to be submitted in writing?
No, it does not. It does not. Oral comments do not have to be submitted in writing. I just like to always encourage it, just because you might have more to say after your oral comment, or it gives you a chance to expand on it. But oral comments do not have to be submitted as written comments either.
Gotcha.
Because since we're recording this for the record, those comments are on record. Okay. All right. On behalf of the department, I would like to thank you for attending this evening's meeting and for your comments. It is anticipated that the proposed rule language will be filed with the Secretary of State for adoption in spring 2024. Once the rules have been filed and become effective, the department will send out a public notice. And at this time, I hereby close the public hearing on the proposed amendments to OAR 141-089, the administrative rules governing the issuance and enforcement of general authorizations within waters of this state. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we appreciate your participation.